A very good morning to you. It's another beautiful Tuesday morning where we talk about issues to do with parenting. Am I excited or am I excited? I think I'm both excited and excited. It's always good to talk about parenting because we need all the help we can get. Parenting has just become one serious issue, especially this year. Who would have thought this year, my friend, God would say, teachers, kaeni kando. Sunday school teachers, pia nyinyi kaeni kando. Wazazi, behold, the children that are a blessing from the Lord are yours to take care of for a whole year. Hakuna kwenda boarding school, hakuna kwenda tuition, hakuna kwenda Sunday school. Who would have thought? Here we are. Well, one of the things I've seen lately that bothers me, and I was talking about this earlier on my radio show, is the whole issue of children trying to earn a living. And I see this every day I drive down the highway, especially in the evenings. You meet all sorts of children. I mean, less than 10 years, between 10 and 15 years, and they're trying to sell you something. You know, aki si uni promote, aki woye anko si uni promote. And I'm not talking about street children. These are not those families that live in the streets. You can look at them and you can tell, huyu alitoka kwa nyumba na anarudi. Ni kama yuko na target za kila siku. Whether they're selling peanuts or they're trying to sell some handkerchiefs to you, you know, whatever it is they're trying to sell. And sometimes I look at them and my heart breaks because sometimes I look at them and I think of my own children. And I'm thinking, where are the parents? Sometimes they're there with the parents. The parents are also trying to hustle for a few shillings here and there. And the children also, alongside their parents, are also trying to do the same. And I always wonder, what are we subjecting our children to? So this morning on Parenting Tuesday, we want to look at child labor. Child labor. What constitutes child labor? What can be said that is child labor? What does the law say about it? What do we need to know? How do we protect ourselves and protect our children? Could there be things we are also doing in our homes that would be looked at as child labor and yet we don't know it? All those things we are going to be talking about today on Parenting Tuesday. My guests are already with us via Zoom. I will be introducing them to you shortly. Before we engage in that, my question for you this morning is this: is it ever right for children to carry the burden of provision? Is it ever right for your children to share that burden of provision with you? Unaenda nje kutafuta, pia lazima waende nje kutafuta. Or using them to supplement the income. It's like your children are becoming the side hustle. Is it ever right? Talk to me. 20316 SMS line. WhatsApp number is 0786316 This morning we are looking at the whole issue of child labor. I'm already getting some responses to the question I was asking earlier on matters. Is it ever right for the children to bear the burden of provision? And your thoughts about children, you know, in the streets trying to sell stuff and trying to just, it's almost like they have daily targets. This one says it's not right, but it's understandable because you find that if we all go our separate ways, the chances is that one or two will bring some money back and it can take care of a thing or two. And then this one says, I see no problem with children helping their parents in their businesses because I had my 80-year-old help me in my shop from time to time when I didn't have a house help. Then I'll go and release her. Problem comes in when it takes over their time to study and play and if their life is in danger. Okay, good. I have two amazing guests with us in studio. First and foremost, I have Patrick Washira. Patrick Washira is from the European Committee for Training and Agriculture, and he is a child protection practitioner. Karibu sana, Patrick. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Pastor. I'm glad to join this program.
Karibu. Also in studio with us via Zoom, we have Carol Chepto. Carol Chepto is an advocate of the High Court and a legal consultant. Karibu sana.
Thank you, James. Thank you.
I think I'll begin with you, Carol. What according to the law, what constitutes child labor? And even before that, first of all, define to us, according to the law, who a child is, and then what is constituted as child labor.
Thank you. A child, according to the law and the provisions of the law, is anyone under the age of 18. So any person under the age of 18 in Kenya is considered to be a child. Mm-hmm. So child labor, in essence, is the engagement of a child in an activity that is meant to be of gain. So be it a business, be it employment, that in essence is child labor. If you're engaging any person under the age of 18 to engage in any activity for gain, whether be it business or a service, you're undertaking child labor.
And is that a crime according to the law in this
It is a
country?
crime. It is a crime, but there are certain provisions that have been made for children of different ages that permit engagement in a sense.
Okay.
So the legality or illegality of it ideally would be confined to the provisions of the law with regard to the ages where one is actually allowed to engage a child, but it also undertakes certain conditions where such engagement should be done.
Give us an example of such provisions, and
Okay.
some of those ages.
So the Employment Act, I think Section 56, I believe, it provides that there would be no engagement of any child, of anyone less than 13 years. So if you're engaging anyone less than 13 years in any form of activity that is for gain, business or any service, you're in violation. That is completely prohibited.
Wow.
But now for anyone between the ages of 13 and 16, there's a leeway that such persons or such children, in essence, can be engaged, but there's also a limitation on what sort of engagement they can be involved in.
Okay. Giving an example,
Yes.
like one of the SMSs said, I see no problem when children help. My 8-year-old was helping me in my shop from time to time. When, would that be looked at as child labor? If your child is helping you in your business and they're below 13?
It depends. That's a tricky one, to be honest.
Yes.
Because even in it depends on the nature of engagement. So if you're engaging them in a sense that they're supposed to be in school, but you've decided they'll become your house help and they will undertake house duties, at that point, yes, you're in violation.
Okay.
So it's not engagement in a formal sense, but the fact that you're taking them away from school and from other activities and engaging them in this thing, then yes, you would be in violation, because a child by the very nature is supposed to be a child. Attend school, engage in play and other activities that as children they're supposed to engage in. So if you're taking them away from school, taking them away and engaging them in a number of hours and limiting their right to play, right to school and education, then definitely you would be in violation.
Okay. Let me rope you in, Patrick,
Yes.
into this conversation, because right now the school equation has been taken out and the children are at home. And I'm seeing lots and lots of children, especially in the CBD, trying to, sell some sweets here, sell some handkerchiefs here. I don't know what you think about that, Patrick.
Thank you so much for this. Let me also begin riding from the same the statement that you have ended with.
Yeah.
And I just give an example. Once I was at Westlands, and in Westlands, you'll find a number of children who are selling or begging or something. And then just near Tuskys Market, there used to be some children who were hovering around there.
Yes.
And I come across this young boy who appeared to be relatively around the age of 12, 13 years there. And I asked, and he was begging for some money. And then and I told him, I'm not willing to give you money, but we can walk into the supermarket and I'm ready to buy you a packet of unga. You go and cook with your family. Because I asked him, why do you need this money for? Then he said, we don't have food at home. But you see, there is a way you look at this child. You can be able to tell a child who actually did not eat in the morning or did not have lunch. So, and I kind of tricked the boy and said, okay, I'm ready to buy you unga. And I could tell the way this child was frowning, didn't want me to buy unga. What he wanted is money. And therefore, as we speak about the children who are begging on the streets or children, it's also good to understand that there is a challenge that is also coming with the whole entire family that is running, in a way that the parents of nowadays are letting the children fed for themselves, or they have so much free time of themselves. And much of it, when these children are not within the hands of or the control of the parents, out there are so many groups of adults who are operating like cartels, who actually ensure that they position these children in strategic areas within the city, and their work is to collect money, and this money is consolidated by certain individuals.
Yeah.
So it's not only so much about children themselves, but there are people who are aiding to ensure that children are out in the streets begging.
Wow. Because when you meet a child in the streets, you're more emotional and more compassionate, because you're looking at them and you're thinking, this is a child. So what you're kind of saying is that they're kind of using the children as bait.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That is the thing. They're kind of using the children as bait, and of course there have been researches that have shown as to why children are engaging in child labor, as Wakili Carol has talked about.
Yeah.
And you find that one of the underlying factors that commonly you'll find in this research is they talk about poverty. And the burden of taking engaging children to take the burden of provision within the family. However, this is not the only thing. There is a greater aspect of neglect from the caregivers, and it is good to acknowledge that. And as a result, you find that, like the example that the question you asked, an 8-year-old is helping in the shop, but this 8-year-old, what I would look at, even where I would classify as child labor, is when the child is deprived of his rights or her rights. The child is supposed to be, engaged in constructive activities. The constructive activities would entail that which enables the child's developmental milestones at that level. A child of 80 years is a child who needs to be either with other children, interacting, playing, because there is a lot of learning that takes place through play.
Yeah.
There's a lot of learning. Even you go to the kindergartens at that age. Actually, teachers are not engaging these children throughout in books.
Yes.
Much of learning is through play, and therefore, when this child is excessively used or is in the shop for extra hours, more than what would be needed to acquire basic skills of what is this in a shop. There is sugar, there is bread, there is what. Excessive hours held up in that shop or held up at Mama Boga's, it now borders child labor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carol, the whole issue of
yes,
children being at home now and they're not going to school, and we have the next 5-6 months in this scenario. I was talking to a teacher friend of mine yesterday, and he was telling me how he's been trying to, get some students together just to ensure there's continuity, do something with them on WhatsApp or even online. But the interesting thing he has discovered is a lot of them are saying they don't have time because wameenda kibarua. So these are children who are probably between 12 and 16. And so he was inquiring, wanasema wameenda kazi ya mjengo. So how will the law look at it? Supposing I'm the contractor and I'm hiring 15-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds kufanya kazi ya mjengo. Is that a crime, and is it punishable by law for me as the contractor?
Yes, gosh, that's quite an unfortunate scenario. I mean, first of all, just the engagement of children out of, like the example that you gave, of children being unavailable because wameenda kibarua.
Yeah.
That in essence, in fact, that is in violation. The Children's Act, I think, Section 10, provides that you cannot, one cannot take advantage of a child and exploit them, and in a manner that, compromises their dignity, their, just functionalities as children, playtime, education, and all that. So at that point, the parents themselves are actually in violation to begin with. But going back to the example you just gave about, for example, a contractor who's engaged a child in a construction site, that is definitely in violation, because even within the age gap, that is the age provisions that is given under the Employment Act, which is 13 to 16, where children can be engaged, it needs to be light work. And light work in this sense is one does not pose a danger to their well-being, one that is not harmful to them. By the very nature of construction sites, I mean, we've all been around construction sites.
Yes.
Things are falling.
Yes.
You know, and even the nature of work involved, the manual labor involved is quite intensive. So at that point already, there's violation in that sense, because that kind of child should not be in that environment to begin with. But going back to the mechanism to handle such a thing, the Act provides that there can be, it doesn't even need to be the parent of the child, anyone. For example, if you passed by a construction site like that and saw a child being engaged, the law empowers you to actually lodge a complaint.
Okay.
To either the child labor office near you, or to the police station. But it needs to be an officer above the rank, at the rank of inspector and above. So once you launch a complaint, they would then undertake an investigation within 7 days, and now submit a report to the relevant office. And then now action can be taken after that.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. We're talking about child labor this morning. Maybe you have a thought, an observation, a question you desperately need to ask. I have two amazing people in studio. They have all the answers. And they will give you the answers. SMS is coming in on 20316. WhatsApp 0786 316 316. Thank you so much for tuning in. Child labor is what we are doing this morning. We are talking about child labor on Parenting Tuesday. In studio with us via Zoom, I have Patrick Washira. And Patrick Washira is with the European Committee for Training in Agriculture. And then also Carol Chepto, who is an advocate at the High Court and a legal consultant, and we're trying to find out what is child labor and what do we need to do in situations where we feel these children are being exploited. How do we protect our children? If you have any thoughts, questions, 20316 SMS line, WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. Carol, what's the difference between domestic work and child labor? Because, let me ask that same question, but also stretch it a bit. The difference between domestic work and child labor, and also the balance between child labor and trying to cultivate an entrepreneurial spirit in your child.
That's quite an interesting one. Because more often than not, I mean, for those who are parents, at home, and especially right now with the kids being home for all this months, you also want to teach them a skill or two. So there's the incentive to just tell them, learn to make your bed, learn to do the dishes and whatnot. But I think it all boils down to the timing. So if you're engaging them in such a way that now they completely have no time left to engage in their education or in their studies. If at the point when you're engaging them, when they're done, they're too tired to even do anything else. And then at that point, you're crossing a line and I will say this because at the home setup, there's a very thin line between you violating their rights as children to education and to play and interaction with other kids. Versus now, of course, you're trying to equip them with a skill or two. So on that bit, the sensitivity will be around, is the engagement and, just trying to keep them, is it trying to keep them busy, or is it actually taking them away from school and play and other activities that will be constructive to their development as children?
Okay.
And just going back to, sorry to take you back, the scenario that you'd pointed about a construction site.
Yeah.
There's actually, if once the investigation is done and it's actually found that you've engaged a child at a construction site, you're liable to a fine of 200,000 shillings or 1 year imprisonment in violation of the payment of the fine, or both,
Oh.
So it really should, shine a light as, to all these unscrupulous contractors who would even imagine to engage a child, because even just the nature of machinery involved in construction sites, it's not within the capacity of a child to be around that environment.
Okay.
Yes.
Patrick, being a child
Yes.
practitioner, there are cases where children are left to fend for themselves. And we see sometimes quite a number of issues from that perspective, where children have to go out and figure out what they are going to eat and how they are going to survive. I don't know what your thoughts about that are, and whether we have any solutions.
Yeah, for sure it's a serious issue. Children are left to fend for themselves. And it begins by exposing children with little or small, what we may term as small work to do. But when it is not controlled, these children are moving out by themselves, and they now have to ensure that they get a living by themselves. And this is the problem, because out of that, if you remember, I had mentioned that these children, more often than not, they get hooked up to some cartels out there.
Yeah.
They are the same children that you'll find them maybe scavenging. Okay, you'll find them in the dump sites. These are the same children that are also used. You'll find them carrying scrap metal, just like the example you gave.
Yeah.
They might not even be connected to the construction site as such, but the construction site next, where they normally go, they will be able to pick up some pieces of metal, and they go and sell. And once they get into this, and this is the unregulated sector of the economy, they go to sell this scrap metal. They get people who are actually luring them with some money. And for a child to get 30 shillings, 40 shillings, 50 shillings, for a child is a lot of money. And these children, with the time, they get enticed day in, day out, and they get up hooked to this system, such that as they wake up in the morning, they actually know where to go. So it doesn't begin by them immediately going to this unregulated market.
Yeah.
But it begins by them being led by their parents to fend for themselves. So in the process, it graduates to so many other things on top of that. Some other scenarios I may give. Look at in some rural areas, there are some children who are exposed to harvesting sand. So they are connected to some areas where they harvest sand. So they are connected to some sort of mining. And these children, this is actually what we classify, I think Wakili Karo will agree with me, as hazardous job, where children are not supposed to get connected with situations or areas where actually the kind of work they involve in harms their own health. It's not quite okay for their development and so on. And some others, like even when we would want to pass on skills to children, we must have moderation.
Okay.
A 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, even a 14-year-old cannot be left at home to cater for siblings, to wash family clothes, to iron clothes. You get all these.
Yeah.
So you find that, and especially now in the current economic situation that we are all going through, parents will say, oh, right now we don't need a helper, because even to maintain this helper is a burden, but we have a 12-year-old in the house. So this 12-year-old will be washing clothes, mopping the house, ironing the same clothes, taking care of younger siblings. And even in some scenarios we have come across where children are left to take care of sickly relatives. So, and it's very difficult for these children, because it's even emotionally draining for them. So it's not just only the physical exposure, but emotionally these children are taken through tasks that are so much difficult for them.
Okay. In fact, that has answered partly another question I was going to ask. But listen to this one. Maybe each one of you can say something about this. I'll begin with Caro. This one says, I feel that parents should be the number one protectors of their children. I have worked in a construction site, and some parents would come to ask for work on behalf of their children who are not even 18 because they are on midterm or they have closed school. Or even some kids would come with IDs which didn't belong to them because they knew we didn't accept underage kids. But it was our policy that we didn't employ underage kids. So I don't know what you think about this, Carol. For me, I'm perturbed that a parent would go to a construction site and atafutia mtoto wake kibarua and the child is not even 18 because they're on midterm or because they've closed school.
Wow. That's really heartbreaking, to be honest.
Yeah.
It really is. But I would say for the listener or the viewer who just shared that information, at that point, if you ever encounter a scenario like that, the first thing is to report this person to the police station, the parent who's coming to the construction site to seek, services on behalf of the child.
But Kara, I'm wondering.
But also,
yes. Could there be another angle to this whole scenario that maybe the parent is trying to do something for their child, but because they are ignorant, they're going about it the wrong way. Maybe they're trying to teach their child to work. Maybe they're trying to teach their child this is how you earn money. But because they are ignorant of what the law says, then they're doing it in the wrong way.
That definitely contributes to it, and that's the point where Patrick Washira's organization and others should come in terms of sensitization, because yes, you're trying to teach them a skill or two, but definitely places like construction site and such places would not be the best, because even the environment itself, as he said, is hazardous and harmful to the well-being of the child. So yes, there's need to do a lot of sensitization, and a lot of this violations, and particularly in rural areas, if you go to, lakeside regions or places where people actually do even crop harvesting in agricultural areas, some of the parents actually are completely ignorant that is, a violation of the law. In fact, they send their kids to, go look work. There's maize harvesting happening. You earn 100 shillings or 200, which will go towards, sustenance of the family. So sometimes it's really out of, sometimes most of the times, economic desperation that such, families are in, dire, conditions economically, and they need resources. And sometimes also because they don't have the sensitization that this is wrong, to them, anything that brings in a shilling or two is the right engagement.
Yes.
So yes, largely, yes, the law is there, but there's definitely a really, really big gap in terms of sensitization into what is, allowed for children to be engaged in versus, here you're crossing a line. If you're caught, you're arrested. Because even and I will speak from a personal experience of a parent who was engaged their child in sand harvesting, and it was somewhere in the lake region. And the kids stopped going to school because, as Washira said, once kids realize that I can go here and I can even earn 300 shillings,
exactly.
Mom said, I only bring 200. I'll get an extra 100. That's a plus for me. So, with time, the kids stopped going to school, and now it became, I'm the village kid who, has money. The incentive, to make money overrides, any other education and other things. And anyway, in any event, they're children. They probably don't know any better. And for them, seeking out that is an opportunity to make money. But at the point, even when the parent was, brought in and arrested, and, the whole process was going on, it became very evident that they even had no clue.
Wow.
First of all, that, sending your kid to a sand harvesting site to buy sand and sell is actually an issue. So a lot of these issues, while there are laws in place, there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of sensitization, training, in just letting the parents know, particularly in the rural areas, because urban areas, by and large, even if you don't know, you'll encounter someone who tells you, hey, it's wrong to do ABCD. But for rural folk, perhaps they have no knowledge of these laws, and that's where the big gap exists.
Okay.
And this is just not only with government, but for organizations such as the one Patrick engages with, it will be important to actually run sensitization programs so that you equip them to know that if I'm doing this, it's wrong, and if I'm arrested, I'm actually, breaking the law.
Okay.
Because more often than not, most of them, even at the point of arrest, don't see anything wrong,
exactly.
with what they've done. So it becomes a really challenging time.
I'm wondering, do we have a lot of cases regarding child labor in this country?
Yes, they are actually. If you go to the child labor services, they actually have a database of children who have been found to be engaged in, even hazardous work environments, child labor. They have all the statistics around child labor. And in fact, the 2017 or 2018 findings by the U.S. Department of Labor around the statistics of engagement of child labor in Kenya are disheartening, to be honest.
Oh my goodness.
So there's quite a lot that is done, but definitely a lot needs to be done, not just in terms of the reporting, but even enforcement, especially for far-flung counties. If you go out of Nairobi, even the child labor officers in the various counties really don't do much of their job in terms of enforcement, because as it is, they're supposed to go around monitoring workplaces and such like sites to just ensure that there are no children within the vicinity.
Okay, Patrick, there's another angle to this issue that I think sometimes we neglect, and I've seen this happen quite a lot, where you bring in a house girl, where unaona kama unamsaidia, but they're really a child. They are 15, and you bring them on board to your home, and we tell ourselves, I'm helping them. But they become like the slave in that house. You took them with the promises that you will help them get back to school and all this. 2-3 years down the line, you've done nothing for them. You treat them like a slave in your house. They're the ones who do everything. What are your thoughts about that issue, Patrick? Because that one is close home to a lot of people.
Very true. And the worst perpetrators are the urbanites, myself included.
The middle class.
We are the worst perpetrators. We are the ones who go up country, pick young girls. Some of them are actually our relatives, close relatives or distant relatives. And what we tell those people in the villages is that I am going to take this child to a very good school. But these children actually are hooked into labor, and they are brought into our own families, where they are children and they are actually tasked to do all the domestic chores that they are supposed that an adult is supposed to do.
Yeah.
And this is the big problem. And it is good to know, and for the people also in up country, to correctly get it, that it's not everything that is in the city is good. And the majority of the people, and for us who have the know-how on these matters, we are the worst perpetrators. And much of it, you'll find that if a child was picked from a certain village and came to a certain relative, then moved to another relative, then moved to a neighbor's house, now is working there as a domestic worker. This is not only about child labor. This is also about trafficking. Because, this is not just about labor, it's about trafficking. Because the moment the child is brought maybe from up country, comes to the city and works in a family, a certain family for 2 months, jumps out of that family, goes to another one, and another one, and another one. At the end of the day, this child is not at the protection of any significant other, like a parent. So this now actually has begun taking it is taking another direction, which actually is now more of trafficking. So it is good that the people in the city because I say that we are the worst perpetrators, that we need to know that we are not only exposing these children to labor, and we are not only depriving them their rights, but we are also, further to that, we are committing offenses like trafficking. But I want to look at an aspect that you had talked about earlier. Carol had also talked about it in issues to do with sensitizations. And we are doing that in communities, in some projects that we have done before. We have conducted the sensitizations at the community level.
Okay.
And through the labor office, the children's office, the people who are on the ground, the chief, the whole administration, and we bring them on table and we tell them, guys, this is what is happening in your area. And these people, through the help of the community members, under the children's department, there is what we call the Area Advisory Council. These are members of the community who are actually volunteers, and their work is, they are picked from each of the villages, and they're supposed to be reporting to the children's office. And what they report is about violations of the rights of children. So what I would tell the members of the public is that within your village, within the sub-county, there are these members of the Area Advisory Council. And even if you are not able to reach at the children's office or at the labor office, although you can still access them at the sub-county level, you can still report to these members, and they can upscale that issue. And from there, action would be taken. However, it's also good to note that sometimes also our justice system is the justice system that would need to be pushed a little bit in order for it to be able to act. And I think that is what Carol alluded to, that even if we are aware of these issues, the people who are supposed to do that, they are not really doing their work.
Okay.
In some areas where we have worked, we have tried to work on what we call child labor free zones. Okay, these members of the community and the authorities come together and they declare and they say, within this area, this is a child labor free zone.
Yes.
And what we need to do is that we need to even work with the Nyumba Kumi, visit. We expect you to report in case there is a child who is working as a domestic worker, a child who is not going to, a child who is, in long hours of some form of work.
Okay. We are talking about child labor. Questions on 20316, WhatsApp on 0786 316 316. Maybe you want to share an experience or you have a question that you need answers to. Umekunywa chai leo ama bado? Eden Tea is the finest garden tea. Eden Tea cares for you and I. Eden Tea are reminding us in this season, together we can stop the spread of the coronavirus. How do we do that? Remember to wash your hands consistently with soap and running water. Remember to maintain interpersonal distance as you interact with other people. Remember to put on a face mask. It is not to cover your head, kwa sababu imeparara kisogo hapa. I mean a forehead. Or neither is it to cover your ndevu or the lack of ndevu. No, it is to cover your nose and your mouth, my friend. Put on a face mask. We need to have a discussion for another day, but I have to mention it here. Easy face mask, they need to be clean. You're putting it next to your nose and next to your mouth. Sometimes I walk around and I look at people and I'm thinking, surely you don't love yourself. How can you put that thing to... Si uyoshe kama ni ya kitambaa. Yoshe with soap and running water, just like you're washing your hands. Let's not put on dirty face masks. Make sure it is clean. And also, if you can work from home, because it's the best thing to do. And at home, anytime is tea time. So reminding you once again, make your way to the supermarkets today. Grab some Eden Tea. Try it out. It truly is the finest garden tea. Today we are talking about child labor. In studio with me via Zoom, Advocate of the High Court and lead legal consultant Carl Chepto. And also I have Patrick Washira from the European Committee for Training and Agriculture. And we're talking about children's rights and child labor. Your questions on 20316, WhatsApp 0786 316 316. So how then do we protect our children, Patrick? How do we protect our children?
Yeah. As I say, the buck stops with the parents. This is where we begin the whole process. It is the high time that we parents, we take up our role and ensure that our children are within the control of our hands. Just like the way you would stretch to reach out, the moment you stretch, know where your child is.
Yes.
And know who is with your child, what the child is doing. You might have seen in media reports previously, and this is an issue that we have spoken quite a lot in the country. There is a big increase of early pregnancies now.
Yes.
Teenage pregnancies. So one would need to know and ask, as a parent, where was this child? What happened that this child got exposed to that level? That is the question that parents we need to ask ourselves. It begins from there, such that even when things are not working, and authorities would need to come and assist or intervene, or agencies like us would need to intervene. But the parents know exactly what is happening. It is not enough for a parent to say that you are going to seek for livelihood and wake up at 3 o'clock or 3:30 in the morning, leave the house, nobody is taking care of the children, and come back at 8, at 9. Within those hours, and it is very good to know that where we are as parents, our children have greater speed than us. So,
Very true.
So yeah, our children have greater speed than us, and they are well technological wise. They are able to know what is happening out there. They are connected with friends out there. So when I say that they have greater speed, we need to know that the moment that you think that you are making the first step, your child is about 5 steps ahead, and therefore we need to come with protective measures to ensure that our children are safe.
Carol, what would
that is the beginning.
Okay, Carol, this one goes out to you. How would you respond to this comment from a parent? They're saying, where is it? Someone is asking, how about when children go behind their parents' back and they don't tell their parents what they are doing? So now whose fault is it? That's a parent asking, not a child. That's a parent asking.
Wow. I would still say the buck stops with the parents.
Yes.
First of all, just the fact that it gets to a point where the child has gone behind your back is in essence a testament to, your lack of diligence as a parent. Because at the end of the day, it does stop with the parent. It's up to the parent to, take protective measures, as Patrick said. But also another issue that needs to be really, really brought forward. And this, unfortunately, is a government issue, intervention. Social protection. A lot of this child labor issues that we're discussing right now are not primarily legal issues. They're economic issues. And, pre-COVID, there was already a slump in, economic activity in Kenya. COVID just came to make an already bad situation worse. So in this situation, I'd say, social protection, all these cash transfers that have been going around, they may not be much, but they do a great deal of help because the issue stems from poverty and from lack of economic resource. So we can, say all the laws that exist, or you're in violation of this and this, but for as long as families are not economically protected or, given a bit of a cushion, now what will happen is, yes, they may do it under the, chini ya maji, for lack of a better word. It will still continue. And in fact, the more it's done, under the, out of the government watch, the higher the risk. Because as Patrick said, you're just not looking at child labor. You open up loopholes for child traffickers to actually take advantage of.
Very true.
So while this is a, legal issue and social issue, it stems from an economic perspective. So I think there's need for government to actually make the necessary interventions economically. Once we have made that step of economic empowerment, then we can start to sensitize them, because you can sensitize a parent that it is wrong to do ABCD. But for as long as they are still living in an area where they think they can send their kids to get a shilling or two, they will still do it. The consequences notwithstanding.
Very true. In fact, that ties into a question that's being asked. This lady is saying, where I come from, there's a quarry nearby, and whenever I pass by, I see some of my neighbors' children there carrying stones. I know they shouldn't be there, but they're there with their parent. In a case like that, how do you even help? It's hard.
Exactly.
It's hard.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. And at the end of the day, even if you do arrest this parent and, you tell them they're in violation of this, the necessary charges are preferred. In fact, for certain situations, there's been a discussion that if you now take out the parent because, the child has been found in such a setup, once the parent is out of the home, the child is even more vulnerable.
Exactly.
Because now, especially for certain setups, the elder children now, who probably are still children, are left to fend for the others because mommy or daddy is no longer there.
Yes.
So you're in essence addressing an issue on one hand, but now creating an even bigger issue on the other hand, and it perpetuates the problem.
Okay.
So, yes.
Naona wakati umenipatia kisogo. I used to hear them say that back in the day. Muda umetupa kisogo. Our time is up. Carol, parting shot.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Carol,
Go
give
ahead,
your parting
Patrick.
shot. Oh, okay. Okay, Patrick, give your parting shot, and then we'll have a parting shot from Carol as well.
Okay. My parting shot is that it takes a village to bring up a child. And it is us to know that we have to take the mantle and take the responsibilities that we are supposed to take. Just like the parent who asked the last question, who sees, it might also be prudent to report to the next authority. That parent might not be the one to solve every problem. Everybody has got a responsibility towards the right upbringing of our children. And therefore, do not feel that the little that you can do is too little. If there is something that you can do, however little it might be, and it can save one child, don't just aim at saving 100 children.
Wow.
If it can save one child, then you have done your part. Patrick will do his part, Pastor will do his part, Caro will do his part, and if all of us, as Kenyan parents, we do our part, our children will be safer. Yeah.
Carol, parting shot.
I think I'll echo what Patrick has said,
Yes.
more or less. Let's be each other's keeper. It's important to also, the same way you're a parent, when you see a child in a scenario like that, imagine that could be your child. I mean, circumstances in COVID if COVID has taught us anything, it's that circumstances can change very fast.
Very true.
So if you see a situation and ignore and say that's not my child, you're also putting your own child at risk. And at the end of the day, God, and sorry to say this, but I believe I can say this is family radio.
Yes, this is family. You can even quote a verse.
Yes. There's when the Bible says that Jesus said, let the children come to me, there's a special, I believe children have a special place in God's heart.
Yes.
And if we are Christians, just you don't even need the push of being your brother's keeper. If you're a Christian and you see, a scenario like that happening, take the necessary steps within what is within your ability to do, and then leave the rest to the necessary agencies.
Very true.
And if you can impact, and this is where the church comes in at this time. Interventions around economic provision would be very, very helpful, especially for us who are in Nairobi, in informal settlements. A lot of those things that are happening around child labor are happening because families have no other way to fend for themselves.
Okay.
If the church can impact in small programs like that, it might go a long way in getting them out of harmful environments. Thank you for having us.
Caro and Patrick, asanteni sana. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for enlightening us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm out of time for this morning. Thank you for being a part of Parenting Tuesday, and I hope you've been able to gain some knowledge and some insight into matters child labor.
For this and more of our shows, log on to www.familymediaonline.com to enjoy a wide variety of programs, from current affairs to testimonials and features, pastoral and inspirational shows, kids entertainment, and so much more. Also stream live on www.familymedia.tv.